Welcome to Urban Uprising, the podcast where we dive into the most fascinating stories of citizens fighting to transform their neighborhoods. I'm Eden, and today we have an absolutely incredible story that's part David versus Goliath, part scientific experiment, and part inspiration for cities everywhere.
And I'm Avery. Eden, this story has everything. Rebellious parents, bureaucratic battles, cherry trees, and some seriously eye-opening research. We're talking about a groundbreaking study called From Citizen-Led Street Experiments to Transformative Change that just came out, and it's blowing my mind because the researchers didn't just study this transformation, they led it.
Exactly. So picture this. You're a parent in Ede, Netherlands, and your kid's new school just opened. The city planners have generously allocated 739 square meters of schoolyard space for 240 children to play. That sounds reasonable, right? But then you find out they allocated 1,100 square meters. That's almost 50% more space just for car parking. Cars literally got more space than kids.
That is infuriating. And this is where our heroes enter the story. Marco te Bromelstrude and Sjoerd de Brandsma. These are not just any parents. They're urban planning researchers who saw this injustice and thought, we're not just going to complain about this, we're going to do something about it. And we're going to study what happens when regular citizens challenge the system.
So they organized what researchers call a transition experiment, basically a real-world test of whether citizens can create lasting change. But here's what makes this study so powerful. They were participant observers with, as one researcher put it, skin in the game. Their own kids attended this school. This wasn't ivory tower research. This was parents fighting for their children's future and documenting every victory and setback along the way.
And what they discovered over 6 years from 2018 to 2024 is both inspiring and sobering. The inspiring part? They actually did it. They convinced the city to let them close the car drop-off area and transformed 560 square meters of concrete into a green paradise. We're talking cherry trees, apple and pear trees, sandbox, stepping stones, picnic tables, a place where kids could actually be kids instead of dodging cars.
The transformation was remarkable. Children started walking and cycling to school independently. Parents began socializing on the benches, kids were playing with mud and building houses for birds. The space became what urban planners call resilient. It could serve multiple purposes and adapt to different needs, instead of just being a place for cars to sit empty most of the day.
But here's where the story gets really interesting from a research perspective. The authors use something called transitional capacity to measure their success across 4 dimensions: behavioral change, institutional change, material change, and organizational change. Guess which ones they totally nailed and which ones not so much?
They crushed the material change, obviously. They physically transformed the space. Behavioral change was mostly successful too. Kids were walking and cycling to school. The community was using the space differently. But institutional change, organizational change, those were much harder nuts to crack. And that's where the sobering lessons come in.
This is the heart of their big insight. You can change the physical space, but if you don't change the system that created the problem in the first place, the old issues will come roaring back. As the experiment went on, key supporters left their positions. New people came in who didn't understand the vision, and slowly the commitment to maintaining this car-free environment started to crumble.
By the end, they found themselves in what they call limbo, a space that had been transformed to be car-free, but without the institutional support to keep it that way. Parents started driving again, but now in an environment that wasn't designed for cars, creating new safety risks for children. It's like they'd torn down the old system, but hadn't built a new one to replace it.
The researchers identified this as a fundamental danger of citizen-led experiments. They write, optimizing material change without accompanying organizational change puts the users of the space in limbo. That's a powerful warning for activists everywhere. Physical transformation without systemic change can actually make things worse.
But let's not lose sight of what they did accomplish. This experiment shows that regular citizens can challenge expert-driven, norm-based planning processes. They proved that when you start with children's dreams instead of traffic engineering standards, you can create spaces that serve human needs, not just car storage needs.
And they identified what they call institutional entrepreneurs, people within organizations who are willing to create opportunities for citizen-led change. The success of grassroots experiments depends on finding these allies inside the system who can help protect and sustain the changes citizens want to make.
What really excites me about this research is how it applies to cities everywhere. How many school environments around the world prioritize car access over children's well-being? How many public spaces are designed around traffic flow rather than community life? This study provides a roadmap for challenging those priorities while also being honest about the limitations of citizen action.
The authors end with a powerful insight that gives me chills every time I read it. They quote Robert Pirsig: "If a factory is torn down, but the rationality which produced it is left standing, then that rationality will simply produce another factory." To create lasting change, we need to transform not just spaces, but the worldviews and systems that shape those spaces in the first place.
So what can listeners take away from this incredible 6-year journey? First, citizen action can create real physical change and shift behaviors. Second, you need to think beyond the immediate transformation to the long-term systems that will sustain it. And third, look for those institutional entrepreneurs who can help bridge the gap between grassroots dreams and organizational reality.
This research proves that the age-old tension between radical and feasible is real, but it's not insurmountable. Citizens might not control every aspect of urban change, but they can absolutely influence the radical, feasible, and communicative elements of transformation. That's real power, even if it's not complete power.
And here's my favorite part. Those 11 cherry trees they planted are still there, still blooming every spring, still creating shade and beauty, and reminding everyone who sees them that another way is possible. Physical change creates its own momentum, even when institutional support wavers.
That's our show for today. If this story inspired you, look around your own community. Where are cars getting more consideration than people? Where could citizen action plant some metaphorical cherry trees? And remember, the research shows that sharing your dreams is often the first step toward making institutional entrepreneurs take notice.